Why is Leo Messi's American adventure with Inter Miami the best example of his greatness? We'll give a disclaimer here, which is to say that this is one part ode to Lionel Messi, and one part analysis of an aspect of his career that to my mind has not been discussed. I have to the best of my knowledge been accurate in quotation and the use of statistics, but this remains largely my opinion of the man I believe to be the greatest player ever to touch a football. I can't say that I remember clearly when I first saw him play, though many of my friends and teammates had already begun to tell me about him. At the time I was hopeful of a career in football myself, and so like Lionel Messi, my Saturdays and Sundays were mostly spent playing the game for my club, rather than watching it on television. I do, however, remember very clearly the first time that I saw him score. Incidentally, it was his very first Champions League goal, which Google reminded me was scored on November 2nd, 2005, at the Nou Camp in Barcelona against Panathinaikos of Greece. He was 18 years old at the time, and I recall the English commentator screaming, "Remember the name," just after he had deftly lobbed the ball over a helpless Greek goalkeeper with his left boot. What many may not remember is that just a few minutes before, he had scored effectively the same goal, except with his right boot, only to have it disallowed for being offside. This boy is different, I thought. Yet, I'll be honest, I wasn't convinced. His talent was plain to see, make no mistake. But I remember thinking in those early days that he held the ball too long, such that space often closed on his teammates before his pass was made. After all, this was a Barcelona team with Samuel Eto'o, Xavi, Iniesta, Puyol, and of course, the legendary Ronaldinho, who was at the time the world's best player. Then there was me, as die-hard a fan of the Blaugrana as you could find, though not Catalan by birth. Who is this kid that's disrupting my beautiful Barca? I thought, why don't they tell him something? What I didn't understand or appreciate at the time was that they were telling him something, and that was, do as you like. You see, they all knew very early on what the rest of us took time to understand. There was truly greatness in the making. Generally speaking, we react to such a feeling with animosity or outright denial of the achievement that's occurred in front of us. A clear example of that behavior arrived on the evening of April 18th, 2007, during the first leg of the Copa del Rey semifinal when FC Barcelona met Getafe. I won't waste your time with a description of the legendary goal we saw that day. You can see it below. But rather, I will draw your attention to what was said post-game by then Getafe coach and German legend Bernd Schuster, a player for both Real Madrid and Barcelona during his career. Of course, as mentioned before, Schuster, like many others who've had similar things to say at the time, was not ready to accept the truth of the matter, which was that his players did try. They just simply couldn't stop the little man. As comparisons to Maradona's famous goal in '86 began to pour in, the resistance became even stronger. It didn't matter that former teammate Ludovic Gili had given us all a hint some years before. We simply didn't want to believe. Indeed, while speaking during the 2003 to 2004 season, when then-coach Frank Rijkaard gave Messi his first minutes in a Barca jersey, Gili recounted what it was like to play against Messi in training. He destroyed us all. They were kicking him all over the place to avoid being ridiculed by this kid. He just got up and kept on playing. He would dribble past 4 players and score a goal. Even the team's starting center backs were nervous. He was an alien. At this point, I could regale you with stories of Champions League triumphs and World Player of the Year awards, as there were several of both between 2009 and the present, and of course, a whole ton of memorable goals. But I prefer to think of his performances against some of the biggest teams of Europe, Manchester United, Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain, and arch-rivals Real Madrid, as the best examples of why Messi is who Messi is. In any sport, it's the player who performs on the biggest stage when the pressure is truly on that we more often than not recognize as the best there is. And when it comes to the former Barca hitman, there's nobody who's done that better. So, with that, Messi began what would ultimately become a terrible time in Paris. That's not to say he didn't perform well, not at all. Despite the criticism leveled at him, he still managed to score 32 goals in 75 total appearances across 2 seasons in the French capital, while producing the most assists of any player in Europe's top leagues. Not bad, I'd say.